My sister found me sitting on the curb outside my own house, in the rain, with a trash bag at my feet and my 3-year-old daughter asleep on my shoulder. She pulled up in her Subaru, rolled down the window, and just looked at me for a second. Then she said, "Get in the car, Lena." I didn't argue, I didn't explain. I just buckled Zoe into the back seat, stuffed the trash bag in the trunk and got in. She didn't ask questions right away. She just drove. And I stared at the windshield wipers going back and forth, and I thought, how did I get here? How did I end up locked out of a house I helped pay for, with my daughter's pajamas in a hefty bag in the rain? I'll tell you how. My mother-in-law had been waiting for this moment since the day Kevin and I got engaged. Her name is Roberta, and she is the kind of woman who smiles at you with her mouth while her eyes are doing something else entirely. She runs what I can only describe as a controlled environment. Her house, her rules, her version of every story. Kevin grew up in that environment, and when he married me, she didn't lose a son. She just started working on gaining a daughter she could manage. I didn't see it at first. When you're 26 and in love and planning a wedding, you don't notice that your future mother-in-law asks to see your wedding venue, just to help, and then calls the venue coordinator the next day to change the centerpiece order. You don't notice that when she says, "Let me know if you need anything," what she means is, let me be involved in everything or I will create problems. Kevin is a good man. I want to be clear about that. He is patient and kind and funny, and he loves Zoe more than anything on this earth. But he grew up terrified of his mother's disapproval, and that terror followed him right into our marriage like a stowaway. We moved into our house, my name and Kevin's name, both on the mortgage, a 3-bedroom ranch in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, when Zoe was 4 months old. That was about the time Roberta started stopping by. Not calling first, just showing up, with casseroles, with opinions, with that smile. The first real sign of trouble was the bank account. Kevin and I had a joint checking account, which is normal. What I didn't know was that Roberta had been on that account since before we got married. Her name was still listed as a secondary account holder from back when Kevin was in college, and she needed access to help him pay rent. We never removed her. Kevin kept saying he'd handle it. He never did. I found out she still had access on a Tuesday morning in March, when I went to transfer money for Zoe's preschool enrollment, a deposit of $800, and the balance was $4,000 lower than it should have been. I sat there at the kitchen table and stared at my phone screen for a long time. Then I called Kevin. She needed to cover the deposit on the lake house rental, he said, for the whole family. Kevin, she said she'd pay it back before July, theirs. Kevin, I said his name again because I didn't have other words yet. She took $4,000 from our account. Without asking me. She asked me, he said quietly. And there it was. She had asked him, he had said yes, and no one had asked me. I want to tell you, I confronted them both that night and drew a clear line, and everything got resolved. That's not what happened. What happened is what happens in a lot of marriages where one person has a complicated family situation. We had a tense conversation. Kevin apologized. Roberta sent me a Venmo request for the lake house, so I'd have the link. And somehow by the end of the week I was the one who felt like I'd overreacted. That is a particular kind of manipulation, and I didn't recognize it until much later. Things escalated slowly over the next year and a half. Looking back now, I can see the pattern clearly. Each move was small enough to be dismissed, but they added up. She started picking Zoe up from preschool on days she wasn't supposed to. Just once or twice, because I was nearby and Kevin said it was fine. She started commenting on our grocery orders. We used an app, and somehow she had access to see what we were purchasing, though I still don't know how. She told Kevin that I was clearly stressed, and suggested maybe I should cut back my hours at work, which would have meant dropping our income by a third. The thing about coercive control is that it rarely announces itself. It comes wrapped in helpfulness. It comes with casseroles and lake house vacations and offers to watch the baby. It makes you feel ungrateful for noticing. The bank account thing happened again in November. This time $600 for Zoe's Christmas gifts. I just didn't want to bother you. I found out when my gym membership payment bounced. I called a lawyer that week, just to ask questions. Her name was Miss Feldman, and she had an office downtown with very good lighting, and she sat across from me and said, "You need to get her name off that account today before anything else." I went to the bank that afternoon. I asked to have Roberta removed as a secondary account holder. The woman at the desk looked at her screen and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Hargrove. I see here that the primary account holder submitted a request last week to add an additional joint holder. That would actually give her equal access and equal rights to the funds." I had to ask her to repeat it. Kevin had gone to the bank. He had added his mother as a full joint account holder. He hadn't told me. I drove home. I sat in the driveway for probably 20 minutes. I went inside. Zoe was at Roberta's, of course she was. Kevin was making dinner and he looked up when I came in and he already knew. He knew from my face. "She wanted to be able to help if something happened," he said. "Like if there was an emergency and you weren't available." "I'm always available," I said. "I'm her mother, Lena. Tell me this wasn't her idea." He didn't answer. "Kevin, tell me, this wasn't your mother's idea." He set down the wooden spoon and turned to look at me, and his expression was something I'd never seen on him before. Not guilt exactly. Something closer to resignation, like he'd known this conversation was coming, and he'd been hoping it would never arrive. "She just wants to feel included," he said. "She is included in our lives. She is not entitled to our money. It's just a bank account, Kevin." I heard my own voice go very flat and very quiet. "She has been taking money from our account. She has access to our spending. She influenced you to change our financial setup without telling me. This is not about feeling included, this is about control. Do you understand what I'm saying to you right now?" He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I'll talk to her." He said that a lot. He talked to her, and then something would be calm for a few weeks, and then something else would happen. That's the cycle. I lived in it for another 3 months before the night in the rain. It was a Friday in February. Kevin had gone out of town for a work conference, 2 nights in Cincinnati. Zoe and I were home alone, which honestly felt like a relief. I got a text from Roberta at 7 p.m. "Sweetheart, I hope you don't mind. I asked the locksmith to come by tomorrow morning to change the front door lock. The key I have doesn't work well anymore and I want to make sure I can always get in if there's an emergency with Zoe." Kevin approved it. He'll explain. "Sleep well." I read that text 3 times, then I called Kevin. He didn't pick up. I called again. Voicemail. I texted, "Call me right now. Your mother just told me she's having the locks changed on our house." Our house. He texted back 20 minutes later. "She mentioned that. It's just so she has a working key. It's not a big deal." I stared at that text and I thought about Ms. Feldman and her good office lighting, and the way she'd looked at me and said, "Coercive control in a domestic situation can sometimes include controlling access to the home, financial resources, or transportation." Transportation. I went out to the garage. My car, a 2021 Honda CR-V that I had purchased myself before we were married, titled in my name, was there. Kevin's truck was gone with him, but sitting on my car's windshield, tucked under the wiper blade, was a note, handwritten on Roberta's monogrammed stationery. "Lena, I borrowed the spare key from Kevin's hook to move the car out of the driveway earlier while the gutters were being cleaned. I'll have it back Sunday." She had the spare key to my car that she had taken, and she wasn't giving it back until Sunday. My primary key was in my purse. My car was still there. She hadn't taken the car itself. She'd taken the spare key and was just letting me know she had it. Which was its own kind of message. "I can access your things. I can take what I want. I can leave you a note about it and there is nothing you will do." I went back inside. I got Zoe ready for bed. I gave her a bath and read her 2 books and kissed her forehead and turned on her nightlight. And then I sat on the kitchen floor and I cried for a while because I was tired. I was just very, very tired. Then I called my sister. My sister is 4 years older than me. Her name is June, and she is a paralegal for a family law firm in Dublin, Ohio, which is 20 minutes from my house. And she has been telling me for 8 months that I needed to document everything. "Document everything, Lena," she said. And I said, "I don't want to make it a legal thing." And she said, "Lena, it's already a legal thing, you just haven't acknowledged it yet." I acknowledged it on the kitchen floor that night. June came over immediately. She brought coffee and a yellow legal pad and she sat across from me at the kitchen table and she listened. She let me talk for an hour without interrupting. And then she said, "Okay, here's what's going to happen." She opened her legal pad. "Tomorrow morning, before that locksmith shows up, you're going to your bank. You are opening a new individual checking account in your name only. You are moving your direct deposit from your job there. You are taking half of the joint account balance, which you are legally entitled to as a joint account holder, and you are transferring it to your new account." I nodded. Then you are calling a locksmith yourself, your own locksmith. And you are changing the locks first. Before Roberta's guy gets there, Kevin's name is on this house too, and Kevin will get a key. But Roberta does not have a legal right to a key to your home. She is not on the mortgage. She is not on the lease. She is a guest, and guests don't get to change the locks. I nodded again. Then, June said, and she looked at me very steadily, you are going to call Miss Feldman Monday morning and you are going to tell her everything, all of it, the account access, the lock situation, the spare key, the money transfers, all of it. What about Kevin? June put down her pen. You love your husband, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes, and your husband needs to choose. He's been not choosing for a long time, which is itself a choice, but it's time to make it clear and make it formal. She paused. Is he a good father? He's a wonderful father. Then this doesn't have to end your marriage. But it does have to end this situation. Those are two separate things. I sat with that for a minute. Okay, I said. I didn't sleep that night. I was at the bank when it opened at 9. The account manager, a calm, methodical woman who did not react to anything I said with anything other than efficient helpfulness, walked me through the process. I opened an individual account. I updated my direct deposit. I transferred my portion of the joint balance. I was careful, I took exactly half, not a cent more, because I'd looked up Ohio joint account law at 2 a.m. and I knew my rights. I called a locksmith from the bank parking lot. He was there by 10:30. He changed the deadbolt and the door handle lock on the front door and the deadbolt on the back door. He gave me 4 keys. I kept 2, put one in my glove box and set one aside for Kevin. At 11:15, Roberta's locksmith showed up. I answered the door. Hi, I said. I'm sorry, I think there's been a miscommunication. The locks were changed this morning. There's nothing to do here. He looked uncertain. I have a work order from a Roberta. She doesn't own this property, I said. I do. My name is on the mortgage. I'm happy to show you the document if you need it. But there's no work to be done here today. He left. I texted Roberta. The locks have been changed. Kevin will have a key. Please don't schedule any more work on this house without speaking to me immediately first. She didn't respond for 6 hours. When she did, it was a paragraph about how she was only trying to help, how she felt unwelcome, how this wasn't the kind of family she raised Kevin to be part of. I read it once and then I screenshot it and sent it to June. June sent back a thumbs up emoji and the words, perfect, save everything. Kevin came home Sunday night. I had Zoe in bed. I had decaf made, which felt like a small kindness. I sat at the kitchen table and waited. He came in through the garage and stood in the doorway and looked at me. I heard, he said. Okay, mother is. He stopped. Started again. She's very upset. I'm sure she is. He sat down across from me. He wrapped his hands around the mug I'd set out for him and he looked at the table for a long moment. Lena, he said. I know I've let things go too far. I didn't say anything. I know that. I've known it for a while. He looked up. I don't know how. He stopped again. She's my mom. I grew up with her doing everything, running everything. I don't know how to push back on that. I know, I said. I know you don't, and I know that's not your fault. But Kevin, I leaned forward. She took money from our account twice. She planned to change the locks on our house without my knowledge. She is treating our home and our finances like she has authority over them. And you have been letting her, even when I've asked you not to. I need you to understand. I am not going to keep living like this. He was quiet for a very long time. What do you need from me? He finally said. I need you to go to therapy. Real therapy, not a one-time session. I need this to be ongoing. I need you to go with me to a couples counselor who can help us figure out how to be a unit when your family is involved. And I need you to call your mother this week and tell her, not me, you, that she is not a joint account holder on any of our finances and she will not be, and that she is not to arrange anything involving this house without speaking to both of us first. He nodded slowly. And Kevin. I held his gaze. If that doesn't happen, all of it, then I need to know that too, because I have a daughter to protect, and I will do that, with or without your help. Something shifted in his face when I said that. Not anger, not defensiveness, something that looked for the first time in a long time like clarity. Okay, he said, I'll do it. He called her Monday morning. I wasn't in the room but I heard pieces of it through the wall, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard him with her, saying words like boundaries and our decision and not your home. She hung up on him twice. He called back both times. I sat in the living room with my coffee and I listened to my husband do the thing I'd needed him to do for 2 years. and I felt something complicated that I didn't have a name for yet. Miss Feldman's office that Thursday was as well lit as I remembered. She listened to the full timeline. She looked at my documentation. I'd brought a folder, June had helped me organize it, the screenshots, the bank transfer records, the note on the monogrammed stationery. "You've done this correctly," she said. She had a way of speaking that made everything sound manageable. "The account situation is resolved. The lock situation is resolved. What you have now is a paper trail documenting a pattern of financially controlling behavior. That protects you going forward. Do I need it to go further than that?" I asked. "Is there a legal step I'm missing?" "Not at this moment," she said. "What you've done, removing the unauthorized access, securing your home, documenting the pattern, that's exactly what you needed to do. If this continues or escalates, you have a foundation. But right now, you've handled it." I sat with that. "You know what you did?" Miss Feldman said, and she almost smiled. "You closed every door she'd left propped open. She's going to look for another way in, most of them do. But now you're watching." Roberta didn't speak to us for 6 weeks. Kevin went to his first therapy session on a Wednesday in March. He came home quieter than usual, and he sat down on the couch next to me. And he said, "My therapist asked me to describe a time I put my wife's needs ahead of my mother's needs, and I couldn't think of one." I sat there for like 4 minutes trying to think of one. I didn't say anything. "That was hard to sit with," he said. "Yeah," I said. "I imagine it was." We started couples counseling 2 weeks after that. It's slow work. Marriage is slow work, especially when you're untangling years of patterned behavior, but we're doing it. Zoe turned 4 in April. We had her party at the house. Our house, with locks that only we have keys to, and a bank account that only Kevin and I can access. Roberta came. She brought a gift that was too expensive, which is her language for an apology. She was careful with me. She was on her best behavior. I watched her the whole afternoon. I was polite. I was even warm in a measured way because Zoe loves her grandmother and that matters. But I watched her. And here is the thing I want you to take from this. If you're listening and you recognize any of it, the slow erosion, the helpfulness that feels like control, the husband who means well but keeps choosing the path of least resistance with his family. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to secure your own finances, your own home, your own access. You are allowed to require that your partner choose, not abandon his family, but choose you, consistently, in the ways that count. You don't have to wait until you're sitting on a curb in the rain to decide you've had enough. I did. But you don't have to. The locksmith who came that Saturday morning, the one I called, not the one Roberta sent, he handed me 2 brand new keys and said, "These are yours, ma'am, nobody else's unless you say so." I held them in my palm for a second, then I put them in my pocket and went inside my house.